Hello, have you ever stared at your gigantic cabbage plant? Yeah, admired it proudly, only for you to give it a squeeze and realize that it's not firm enough. It's squishy, just more or less like a pillow. So today, I just want to exactly to look at what may be the cause of this, and what I'm able to do here to achieve, firm heads at the time of harvest. So what are some of the causes that may cause your cabbage heads, your cabbage plant, not to form firm heads? In fact, this is a common frustration to so many farmers. Imagine putting all that effort, sowing your seeds, transplanting, taking care of them, weeding, watering, keeping off pests and diseases. Only that during harvest now, you don't get, you get the quality of the cabbage that you get is not good enough. It's not firm enough. You get something that looks like loosely stacked leaves. That's quite a common frustration to so many farmers. And I want exactly to look at what could be some of the culprits that may cause this your cabbage is not to form firm head. So our first major culprit is nitrogen. More so, an overload of nitrogen. See, nitrogen is represented in the NPK fertilizer. It's represented by the first number. And nitrogen is quite an absolutely important nutrient, especially for leafy greens, cabbage being one of them, especially during the initial stages of your crop, because it encourages the vegetative growth. And that initial stage, the better the vegetative growth goes, that's when it will also determine the quality and size of your cabbage. But an overload of the same, excessive nitrogen, of course, will work against your cabbages having firm heads. Because think about it this way: when you add too much nitrogen on your cabbage, it will encourage the crop to grow more vegetative growth, the outer leaves, and then now instead of encouraging the crop to, the internal leaves to come together to form a solid core. So in the long run, you end up with a loosely packed cabbage, which is not firm enough. And that could be caused by an overload of nitrogen. So how do you fix that? You need to be careful how you feed your crop. During the early stages, after transplant and all, you can add either balanced fertilizer or a fertilizer rich in nitrogen for the vegetative growth. That initial stage, nitrogen is quite an important nutrient, encourage the lush vegetative growth. However, during now the mid to towards the end of or if you see signs of the crop, starting to form the head, you need now to get a fertilizer that is rich in phosphorus and potassium. In this case now helps build the internal core of the root system and the internal core of the cabbage, allowing it now to form firm heads. And this time around, you make sure you don't add fertilizer that is rich in nitrogen. So the other the component you need at that stage, when you see signs of the head formation, is fertilizer rich in phosphorus and potassium. It will encourage the root development and ensure the plant resilience and ensure a proper, firm head. If you're adding organic matter, especially for manure, you also need to be very careful of fresh manure. Most times, more often than not, fresh manure tends to be very high in nitrogen. So you can add some compost, well-aged, well-blended compost, well-balanced compost. That will be a good remedy. But if you have to do manure, ensure that manure is well decomposed, and you can also decide to add some other soil builders that you can be able to balance your nutrition, that you don't have too much nitrogen that will compromise on your quality of your cabbage. So the second culprit that may compromise on the quality, the firmness of your cabbage, is heat. See, like for us here at the equator, at times we experience quite some high temperatures. So for cabbages, and all other crops in the brassica family. These are cool climate crops. So they prefer cool climate, a well balanced climate. So when it gets too hot, at times the crop might panic, and in that instance now the crop tends to go to try to produce some seed. That's a survival instinct for the crop. And now that goes to a process called bolting, whereby it tries to form a stalk where now to produce seed. And with that, what does now, instead of the cabbage forming a firm head, instead actually the internal coils now start loosening up to allow for the cabbage to go to seed, which will now compromise on the quality or rather the firmness of your cabbage heads. So how do you fix the issue of temperature? Because you can do something like, first thing you can do is probably the timing. When you transplant, when you're growing your crop, check on the timing, ensure that when your crop will be growing, you'll have the temperatures will be favorable, such that the temperatures will not be so high. Or the other thing you can do is the variety. There are various varieties of cabbages out there, some that are more tolerant to the heat. So if you know that your crop is going to be growing during the hot period, you can choose a variety that is at least heat tolerant. Yeah, and if now you get to a position whereby maybe probably you're not in control there, and you still want to grow, you can consider setting up a shade net, about to at least cover your crop using a shade net about 30 to 40% or so, so that it doesn't get that extreme, not hit by that extreme temperature. And with that, you'll be able to protect your crop, and it will eventually come up with a good firm heads. The third culprit, and which is often overlooked, is watering, more so inconsistent watering. For example, if you let the soil, if you have periods whereby you let the soil dry out completely, and you have bursts of watering, whereby now the watering is not consistent. See, that leads the crop to get into stress, which interferes now with the growth of the crop, the even and consistent growth of the crop, that will allow for the internal leaves to layer up nicely and firmly. So to fix the issue of irregular watering, ensure that you do deep regular watering. Not those little sprinkles, daily sprinkles. Ensure you deeply water your crop. Ensure that and do that regularly. Don't let the soil to dry out. The other thing, because now at times those spats of letting the soil dry out and then doing heavy watering, it also may cause, apart from affecting the firmness of the cabbage, it may also result to the cabbage heads splitting due to the inconsistency, especially more so if you let the soil dry out, then it gets heavy bursts of watering. It may lead to the heads splitting, and that compromises on the quality of your cabbage. The other thing you can do is to regulate, and if probably the issue of watering, to conserve the moisture, is mulching. You consider doing a good layer of mulch, maybe dried leaves or whatever product you can get, to do a good layer of mulch to ensure that now you conserve the moisture after the watering is done. So you conserve that, and ensure no given time the soil dries out, and with that you'll end up with quite healthy and firm cabbage heads. So the fourth culprit that may result to you not having firm heads is the variety of cabbage that you choose to grow. So there are so many varieties out there. Some depending on some early season, late season varieties. Some that are not, they don't get that dense into when farming up. So when you're choosing your variety, that's something you need to check also. It's not necessarily that you've done anything wrong in terms of management and all, but the choice of the variety. So before you purchase your seed, read the seed packet, see what kind of variety it is, how what condi- s- the- what are the requirements, what kind of variety it is, whether it's early season, late season, mid season, yeah, whether how dense it gets. So the variety is also a major, can cause, determine how large, how firm your cabbages will grow. So you need to be on the lookout for that when you purchasing your seeds. Read the seed packet carefully to see what kind of variety you're growing, and if it matches with your conditions that you want, or whatever you want as a result. The fifth and the final culprit that may cause your cabbages not to farm up nicely is crowding. Also, the spacing of your cabbage when during transplant, how you space your cabbages. Also, crowding. So your cabbage might look large and lush, but if it's overshadowed, the spacing doesn't have space to expand on all, it will definitely not be able to farm up nicely. So you need to ensure you space your cabbages right. Don't overcrowd to allow for light, because cabbages require light. They don't do well in shaded environment. So if it's the crop is under a shaded environment, the heads will not form properly. So, and more so, if you crowd them so much, some crops may be overshadowed. Despite them having, looking lush and big, they'll not be able to form farm heads. So check on the spacing. As again, it goes back to the previous culprit, which is the variety. Depending on the variety, check on the spacing. What are the requirements so that you can have an ideal spacing? With that, you'll have a good quality farm head. For the spacing during transplant, ensure you do proper spacing. If need be, you can choose. I know it's painful at times, but you may opt to thin out some crops, and also ensure that the crop gets at least a good amount of full sun, at least 6 to 8 hours of full sun. That helps a lot too in the head formation. For the crop to be able to form a dense head. So ensure there is nothing overshadowing. There are no crops, taller crops or trees or structures around, so that now you can have your crop is able to get full sun at least 6 to 8 hours on a day daily, and with that now you'll be able to form a dense firm head. So here I have this crop that is 2 months, 1 week from transplant. So in about 2 to 3 weeks, we should be ready for harvest. And as I feel, the heads are farming up nicely. They're quite firm already, and they're not yet mature yet. So a quick recap: what might cause your cabbages not to farm up nicely? Nitrogen. Check your nitrogen. Don't overload. Check on the variety. Check on the temperature. Make sure it's not too hot. And finally, on the spacing. Ensure that you do ideal spacing, and ensure that the crop gets full sun, full enough light, and with that you'll be able to get a well farmed up crop, and that is firm enough and good quality. So that's more like it. Thank you so much for watching. Till the next one, happy farming.